Look, staying healthy isn't easy. Watching your diet, hitting the gym, avoiding stress. But a good night's rest helps boost your overall health and wellness. And it couldn't be easier. The new Sleep Number 360 Smart Bed is the only bed that effortlessly adjusts and responds to both of you. The result? You wake up ready for anything. Proven quality sleep is life-changing sleep. And now, the new Queen Sleep Number 360 P5 Smart Bed is only $17.99. Save $600. Only for a limited time. To learn more, go to sleepnumber.com.
The doctor asked to talk to my parents. When he spoke to my parents, what they were told was that I had a form of schizophrenia. And having spoken to my dad about this since, the doctor was actually apparently quite excited about it because he thought he'd found a new form of schizophrenia.
Content warning. This podcast contains discussions surrounding hospitalisation and mental health which some listeners may find distressing. My name is Halina and this is the A Sonic Hug podcast. Over the coming months and episodes, you will hear the voices of people from different walks of life who deal, experience and battle mental health issues. In this podcast, I spoke to Cammy about his false diagnosis of schizophrenia. I've known Cammy vaguely for over 10 years now, and I've written about his music, but we started conversing more over the last few years when I started speaking more openly about my own mental health. This account from him is one of the most shocking I have heard since starting this podcast, but there is also a lot of hope and a lot to take away when listening to the different stages of his life. This is Cammy's story.
I'm Cammy McFarlane. I'm a musician from the South Side. Okay, so I'm going to go back to probably the start of when I was a teenager. When I was maybe 14, 15, I was bullied. I was a very different kind of kid from the kids that were at my school because I was a drama kid. I was a musician, a drama kid, and there didn't really seem to be anybody else in my school that was really like that. So the folk in my school would kind of see me as being a bit odd, and they would like call me like freak and stuff like that. But part of the problem as well would be that I would play up to that a little bit as well. But that was something that I think really knocked my confidence when I was a teenager. I went to a youth theatre so I lived in a place called somewhere in Ayrshire called Stewarton, and there was a youth theatre in Kilmarnock, and I'd go to that every Saturday, and that's where I would kind of meet kind of more kind of like-minded kind of kids, where we were all kind of, I felt I could really be myself there. So it was kind of a weird thing that was going on where I would go to the youth theatre on the Saturday and I'd like feel kind of myself and normal, and then I would go back to school on the Monday, and then that would all get kind of quickly kind of kicked out of me almost because I was the weird kid. So I had a real kind of like slowly, when I think about it, I didn't really totally notice it. I just knew that when I was going to school, I wasn't having that great a time, and I could feel, when I think about it now, I can feel that my confidence was definitely like getting chipped away at. So I would say that's the first kind of issue that I had. And then I finished school, and I got to go to college to study acting and performance. And that was absolutely brilliant. It was amazing, because that was where I could totally be myself. And with, again, similar to the youth theatre, where I was like hanging out with people that were like me. Nobody else thought that, like I was a freak or kind of weird. But sometimes maybe I was one of the more normal, the inverted commas, normal kind of kids there. But that was where I felt myself. And that was great. But during that time, my mum and dad and my brother had to move to Aberdeen. My dad got work up in Aberdeen, and I still stayed in Ayrshire at the time, and travelling to Glasgow every day to go to my college course. Totally loving the college course, like absolutely loved it. It was just everything that I wanted to do, but I got a bit too into it, and this is where like my kind of this real issue happened for me. I was studying the work of Stanislavski, who has a book called An Actor Prepares. It's one of the kind of most kind of famous books that anybody that's that is an actor will know it. In the book, he talks about certain kind of techniques you can do to get yourself really invested in being a character. I got too into it, and I got too into what most people would associate with method acting. But because I was by myself, I was living by myself, and I would be going to college, coming back, learning a little bit more, reading this book, so into it. Also at the time I was like, I had a part in like one of the kind of shows that we were doing, and the part was really intense. And what I was doing was going over the book and really practicing these techniques constantly. And making myself like kind of believe like that I was somebody else. Like almost one point I do remember like just swapping like maybe 2 minutes, going to go, oh, I'm going to be this person for 2 minutes. Oh, I'm going to be this person for 2 minutes. I'm going to have this emotion for like 5 minutes, and just testing that out to see what I could do. Not thinking about the damage that could actually do, because what I was doing was just like dramatically changing my mental state. And then at some point, I was so into it that I just stopped sleeping and I stopped eating. And I do remember thinking, oh, I can just live on water. I can just tell myself this glass of water is like a glass of iron brew. And like, that will just do the same job. I mean, that doesn't make any sense, but I seem to have got to the point where I could believe that. So I went for a really intense week of behaving like that, where I wasn't really sleeping very well at all. Well, I mean, I just given up on it. I felt I don't need sleep anymore. I don't need to eat really. Don't need to drink. And I know I was behaving quite oddly. And I remember people thinking like, getting an impression that people were finding me quite annoying, but I didn't really know why. Because I was having a great time. I was like absolutely elated. I was like just having just the best time. It's really weird because as I remember it, and I remember it really well, and I remember the date that happened as well. It seemed to go from like Monday to Friday almost. And I got to the Friday at the end of my week at college, and I was meeting my friend to go to the cinema, and went to see a film. And halfway through the film, it was weird. It was like something kind of snapped, and I started to believe that what was happening in the film was actually like real. It was like a real thing that was going on, and it made me feel kind of quite unnerved, but also made me feel kind of like, wow, I've got some information that other people don't know. This what's happening on the screen is reality. So it was really, really odd, but it also made me feel quite scared. I remember after we had seen the film, I do remember I think I was quite quiet, and I remember my friend's mum coming to pick us up to take us home. But I refused to get in the car because for some reason I thought that she was possessed, and I just truly believed that. So what happened after that was I walked home just by myself from Kilmarnock to Stewarton, and that's a good distance. And on that walk home, I started seeing rainbows. I started actually thinking that I could talk to the ghost of Jim Henson. I actually do remember thinking, oh, do you know what? I think the Muppets are actually a real thing. I think I've worked this out now. I think I know the Muppets are real. It's really, really odd. So I walked home with this brilliant, this discovery, and then I got home, and then I wasn't content at home. So I thought, I've got to go and tell my friends about this thing I've worked out. So then I walked back again from Stewarton to Kilmarnock again. And then by the time we got to Kilmarnock, I just by this point decided that I was not even going to like worry about the norms of society anymore, and I felt like I didn't need a passport. I felt like I'd already given up on food and water. I didn't feel like I didn't even need to have a real identity anymore. I remember I tore up my passport. I had it with me because I used to use it for like ID for getting drink, and I just ripped it up. And then the next thing I tried to do was I tried to fly in my jacket, like a magic carpet. Then the police came, and I still thought that what I was doing was normal. They took me to hospital, and I found out like later after all this happened, I found out that the hospital that I was taken to was it wasn't the unit I was supposed to go to because the beds were full. But I ended up somewhere else. It was like for people that were in a much worse state. Obviously, I was in a bad state, but I was taken to somewhere that was much worse. I was an absolute pain in the neck. I know it was a pain in the neck. I was behaving just really manic. And yeah, so I remember having a conversation with, must have been either a nurse or a doctor, where I was arguing with them, and they were saying to me, look, if you don't behave yourself, then you're going to get sectioned. Do you want to be sectioned? I was just being really flippant, and they said, yeah, I do actually. Yeah, go on. And I remember it being like, well, really, you really, because you're signing up for this. And I was like, yeah, I do. And then I got myself sectioned. I've got a feeling that probably wouldn't happen now. This is nearly 20 years ago. I've got a feeling that that's not something that would happen now. They gave me something. They gave me some drugs. I can't remember what they were, but they made me they knocked me out. In my mind, I think it was like 2 days later, really, that I kind of properly came to. And when I came to, I was kind of all right. I wasn't like manic anymore. I was confused and scared because I ended up being in a mental ward by myself. It was my own room that I'd ended up in because I was in this intense ward. I was getting monitored on a constant basis. I'd have conversations with a doctor. At the time, I think there was still a little bit of kind of mania going on to start with, and I was still being quite argumentative, which is really not like me at all because I'm a total people pleaser. So it was quite odd. By this point, my parents had come down from Aberdeen. I think it must have been a couple of days into staying there that the doctor had asked to talk to my parents. When he spoke to my parents, what they were told was that I had a form of schizophrenia. And having spoken to my dad about this since, the doctor was actually apparently quite excited about it because he thought he'd found a new form of schizophrenia. The evidence that he had was because of how I was behaving when I was in the room by myself. I'd be singing songs to myself, but that was kind of really to kind of take my mind off what was going on, and I'd be rehearsing kind of bits of the play that I was learning for college. So yeah, so he thought I had schizophrenia. I told my parents that I would never function in society again. I would never be able to have a partner or a job, and basically that was it. Luckily, my uncle was a psychiatrist, and my dad had been talking to him a lot about what was going on. And Donnie, my uncle, on the side of, no, it really doesn't sound like Cammy's got the schizophrenia. It sounds like he has had a manic episode that's been brought on from the intense stuff he was doing in his college course, not eating, not sleeping. Because anybody, if they go for a long period of time of not sleeping, will start hallucinating. So luckily, he was there to see that, which then led to my parents saying to that doctor, no, we're not happy with this. We'd like to have a second opinion. And so they did, and they managed to move me from that intense ward to a ward in the Crosshouse Hospital that I was originally supposed to go to. And then when I saw the second doctor right away was like, nah, it's a manic episode that you've had. Definitely not schizophrenia. So that's what happened. Unfortunately, by that point, I had been given medication for schizophrenia, And with that came a lot of bad things. I got out of hospital, I got taken home, but because of the medication, and obviously because of what happened, I really wasn't myself. But the medication, I can't remember what it was called, but the medication I was on could affect like your speech pattern, your ability to walk, your ability to think, your appetite. So I just felt like a kind of really, like just a really heavy, like a man made of bricks or something. It just felt like really down. It wasn't for me. I really feel it was from the medication. Maybe when you see people that in the hospital sometimes, and you see them kind of walking in that kind of shuffly kind of way. That was the walk that I had, and I couldn't do anything about it. It was just that I was like, that's what I was stuck like that. But I was told that I couldn't come off the medication because it was already in my system, and I'd have to like reduce it over a period of time, which I just knew was not okay for me. And it's just something when I say this, I kind of want to make this clear that I don't think that it's a good idea for people to just come off medication. I've got friends that have suffered depression and they've had taken antidepressants, and then they've just come off them, and it's affected them really badly. But that's what I did in this instance. My mum would come through each morning and she would give me the pills, and then I'd pretend to take them, and then I'd hide them under the mattress. And not long after that, I feel like it was a period of about 4 weeks, I started to feel like myself again. I was able to walk again. Like all the kind of horrible side effects of that medication were gone, and everything that happened felt like a really weird dream. But it was really hard to kind of comprehend what had actually happened. Although I was a lot better, and the mania was done, certainly didn't have that schizophrenia. New issues happened. I ended up kind of being quite anxious. If I was sitting on a bus, I would just suddenly just like totally freak out. And I would or maybe if I was outside, I'd have to find out where the nearest toilet was so I could just go and hide in the toilet. So that was really tough. And it was kind of tough kind of trying to rebuild myself. Music really, really helped me out through that, both in listening to it and writing it, like getting it out. And I wrote like a bunch of crap songs, but it really helped. Listening to that music just would take me to a different place. So with the music, and I decided I was going to I was going to do something to fix myself. I was just like devouring like self-help books. The hospital sent me like a mental health nurse that saw me about like twice, and they gave me like a fact sheet on how to deal with anxiety, but that was pretty much all I got. Again, this is nearly 20 years ago, so hopefully things are better now. This is like a really, obviously this is a really dark situation that I've been through. And I sometimes talk about it in quite a light way. And I think that's maybe my way of coping with it, maybe. And that's the thing that we do. And this thing that Scottish people do, we kind of make a joke of these things sometimes. Maybe that's not appropriate, but it certainly helps me. Sometimes it can just like seem like there's no way out. But that doesn't have to be the way. If you find the right techniques, and talking is so important as well. A couple of years later, after this, when I had a job, I was still kind of suffering a little bit with the anxiety and this kind of thing. And through my work, I was actually referred for counselling, and the work that did to talk to somebody was fantastic. If anybody is feeling they have kind of issues, if they can find some way to talk to a counsellor, I think it can work so well for people. I've actually studied counselling. I've done a course on counselling and communication to kind of to help people too. What would my life be like if I hadn't had a second opinion? I'm so thankful that my uncle was there to kind of guide my parents, but I think my mum and dad wouldn't have let that. They wouldn't let that lie. There's no way. I do wonder about the doctor a lot. I wonder what happened to him. I wonder if if he made like another mistake and if he lost his job, or if he just continued, or if there was another Cammy, was there like another Cammy that had a new form of schizophrenia and their life was ruined. It's sad. I feel kind of bad about it, but because I'd like kind of mostly go away with a positive message. That's why I keep saying that it was like it's nearly 20 years ago. So I really hope that maybe these things happen still. I don't know. Thinking about it, the way that everything was checked. Well, that person said to me, "Are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to section yourself for 28 days? You sure you want to do that?" And I said, "Yeah." And then they said, "Well, okay then, that's you sectioned." I really hope that that's not something that would happen now. You know, like because that's just awful. Because I was not in a state to make that decision, but I was an adult, and that's what I was told. So I'd effectively sectioned myself. So yeah, anyone can do that, but don't do that to somebody that is not. Well, essentially, I wasn't sound of mind. You know, that I was. How could I make that decision? I'm the guy that was just trying to fly in my jacket like a magic carpet. Oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah, no, section me. That's fine. I think that makes total sense to me. I guess this applies to the aftermath of the mania. You know, when I was in the kind of darker place with anxiety and the panic attacks. If you can talk to somebody. If you're able to speak to a counsellor, you know, get a place to speak to a counsellor, then absolutely take that chance on. Self-help books have just done so much for me. You've got your Headspace app, which is brilliant. I still use that now. I would really recommend that. Exercise as well. Geez, that's so important. I mean, even now, if I get a wee bit kind of anxious or whatever in the house, I've get out, go for a walk, go for a run. Even if you don't get a nice day like today, then still go out. Even if you feel like I don't want to, just get out, and it really makes such a difference. It really does. The real problem we do have, and like I've said already, this is great about the podcast, is it's like normalising mental health and hopefully, you know, a step towards getting people to actually talk more. And I know that when I was at school, there was the option to speak to your guidance counsellor, but it wasn't very private. I seem to remember it wasn't a very private thing. Like if you went to go and speak to your guidance counsellor, everybody would kind of know about it. So once you've done that, those people that are bullying you know you've done that. So you've just given them something else to, you know, another reason for them to have a go at you almost. So I'd like to think that maybe it's more private now in school. Like, you know, there was some way, I don't know how you do it, but there was some way that a kid at school can feel that they can really go and speak to somebody in confidence and for it to be private. Maybe, I mean, I suppose now there's so much we can do with technology, so maybe there's a way that can be done now. I remember thinking, if I speak to anybody about this, it'll just make matters worse. My 8 to 10 year old self, what would I say to them? I just feel like the first thing that comes to mind is I just want to say, it's going to be all right. You're going to be okay. Don't worry. I'm thinking about it. I haven't, obviously I've spoken about my teenage years, but I think I've always been a bit of a worrier. And probably it'd be quite nice if, like, future Cammy could say to past Cammy, "Nah, it's all right, mate. It's fine. Life's going to be pretty good. You're going to have a really hellish bit, but you will actually get through that, and then life's good after that. Things can be dark, but if you persevere, hopefully you'll get there."
Remember more, improve your focus, and multitask better. Hum is a brain sharpener that helps you do all three. Hum's wearable boosts your working memory and will be available in late 2021. Sign up to be notified when Hum launches and to learn more about the science behind Hum at thinkhum.com. That's thinkhum.com. Hum is designed for healthy adults and should not be used if you're pregnant, have cognitive impairment, implanted devices, or a history of seizures. The Hum patch is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. To learn more, go to thinkhum.com.
Look, staying healthy isn't easy. Watching your diet, hitting the gym, avoiding stress. But a good night's rest helps boost your overall health and wellness. And it couldn't be easier. The new Sleep Number 360 Smart Bed is the only bed that effortlessly adjusts and responds to both of you. The result? You wake up ready for anything. Proven quality sleep is life-changing sleep. And now, the new Queen Sleep Number 360 P5 Smart Bed is only $17.99. Save $600. Only for a limited time. To learn more, go to sleepnumber.com.
That was Cammy's story. Cammy radiates positivity when you speak to him. He's exceptionally talented and just a bright being to be around. When he first approached me to talk about his story, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and after listening to his account, I felt so incredibly sad that he had to experience such a horrendous journey. It's important for me to look at 3 key stages of Cammy's life here. It's often the case that children don't feel they fit in, but with his deep love of drama and vibrant character, Cammy faced an often tough time in his school environment. There's a fear in many not to stand out or go against the grain because it leads to removal from groups or, in this case, bullying. The fact is that we should be encouraging children, nurturing their personality, their loves and their characters. And this leads on to the importance of creativity in the arts. They are a beautiful and fundamental need for our lives. They aid mental health, they promote diversity and inclusivity, but the irony is that many are ostracised within this field. Cammy spoke about not feeling as if he could speak to his guidance teacher and the lack of privacy surrounding it. I remember experiencing this at secondary school and a fear that others would find out, so you just bottle it up, especially when you're experiencing issues or having a tough time with other children. It continues the narrative, however, of us pushing these feelings deep down and those manifesting into something far worse in later life. It's therefore imperative that we are able to be ourselves, feel safe and listened to as children. Luckily, I've spoken to numerous other younger people who feel they are supported, but there is an argument that things need to be even better. Cammy talks about finally finding his tribe as a teenager, and this is one of those themes that keeps recurring through the series of finding people who relate. The flip side here was that Cammy was so elated that he devoted his whole being and it became obsessive. This was not his fault and there was nothing to chastise here. It was simply a door opening and perhaps he just didn't want it to end. Perhaps the relief and sheer joy of discovery meant that he wanted to consume it all, and that's exactly what happened. The thread continues with regards to guidance though, and the irony is that whilst Cammy managed to feel as if he belonged, those around him still didn't know the extent of what was unravelling and what was to come. It's terrifying to think that Cammy could have been pushed into a false life, one which would have perhaps been heavily medicated and led to removal of rights, but the further emotional and mental impact on those closest to him. It's therefore important to understand the complexities that surround mental health. Cammy talks about mania and hallucinations contributed to by a lack of sleep and food, 2 basic human needs which we need to function. It therefore begs the question, how many people are experiencing this regularly who don't have access to these things, and what has this led to? The final stage to look at is how the combination of all these things have impacted Cammy in recent years. I understand fully when he talks about the panic attacks and anxiety of being in public, and I have and still do experience these things. Being on public transport and the fear of being caged, being out in public and needing somewhere to escape to. The severe social anxiety that impacts you after a traumatic episode is both dreadful, but indeed fascinating. Another aspect I relate to with Cammy is learning your own mental health and how to deal with it. It's vital that we get professional help, but it's also important that we find out what coping mechanisms work for us. He cites exercise and self-help books, but he also mentions training and counselling to help others. And it's that desire to help others that comes from being at the depths of poor mental health. Cammy is such a talent. He's so kind and giving. It's sobering to hear that a person like this has experienced so much pain and uncertainty. But he has shown a strength which is incredible, and like many others who experience trauma like this, he has flipped the switch and looked at how he can give back. And that's what makes him such a special human. And when he says, if you persevere, you can hopefully get there, his resilience is testament to this, and he is an inspiration. If you have experienced or experiencing anything described in this episode, you will find support information in the text with this podcast. A Sonic Hug podcast is recorded, produced and edited by me, Halina Rafai. We are also part of Scotland's podcasting network, The Big Light. Until next time, deep breaths.
Look, staying healthy isn't easy. Watching your diet, hitting the gym, avoiding stress. But a good night's rest helps boost your overall health and wellness. And it couldn't be easier. The new Sleep Number 360 Smart Bed is the only bed that effortlessly adjusts and responds to both of you. The result? You wake up ready for anything. Proven quality sleep is life-changing sleep. And now, the new Queen Sleep Number 360 P5 Smart Bed is only $17.99. Save $600. Only for a limited time. To learn more, go to sleepnumber.com.